Not long ago, I beat Xenoblade Chronicles for the first time on Wii, and just about immediately after that, I jumped into its sequel on Switch, also for the first time, Xenoblade Chronicles 2. And I just spent about 150 hours with this little cartridge in my Switch. Tiny cartridge, massive game. Overall, I would call this sequel a less consistent experience than the first game, and by that I mean there were times I enjoyed it more than the first game, and also times I enjoyed it quite a bit less. I would say this game is more complex than Xenoblade Chronicles 1, and also delivers more content overall, although one could argue that content is delivered in kind of a clumsy fashion, a little ill-conceived at times. On the whole though, I felt this game was as good as Xenoblade Chronicles, if not better, due to its strengths being really strong. I think this game is a little harder to get into than the first Xenoblade Chronicles, but potentially more rewarding depending on who you are. I want to start by getting into the story and characters of this game, so people will wonder if you need to play the first Xenoblade Chronicles to enjoy this one, and I would say it's recommended but not required. There are a few references to the first game in this one, but it's a largely separate story. You're not really going to be feeling out of the loop if you haven't played the first game. You just might appreciate a reference here and there. The no-pawn characters return here. There are a lot more of them. They're spread all over the game. So just beware of that if you didn't like Riki in the first game.
What? That's it?
It's life, Mayor!
If you say.
We not cross the line, but we step on it.
Now the themes of this game are pretty heavy when you get down to it. They include nihilism, mortality, conflicts over natural resources. The game even gets into the purpose of existence. But all of these themes are hidden underneath quite a comedic surface. This game's tone is a little less balanced than the first game. The first game had a pretty even mix of drama and comedy, but this game leans more into the comedy. Say, more like 60 to 70% comedy, to 30 to 40% serious moments. And you're hit with comedy mostly in the early parts of the game, and by early I mean like the first 30 to 40 hours of the game. There's no denying that this game has a lot of anime stereotypes baked into its story and character interactions. There are legs of the main quest that I would equate to anime filler episodes like in a shonen anime. And you'll see things like sweat drops on the characters and characters instantly falling over in one frame for comedic effect. Things that you'll recognize from anime if you've seen a lot of anime. There is some fan service in the game that's fairly noticeable, but that was also in the first Xenoblade Chronicles if you knew where to look. It was just a little more subtle in that game. And this type of thing is just common in JRPGs. It's common in Japanese media. I'm kind of used to it. The tonal imbalance of this game is more a problem feel in the early parts of the main quest. There are places where you get derailed from your main objectives, and you end up doing things that just seem zany and ridiculous. So you have to be patient through those moments until you get later in the game, and then it does get more serious and emotional. And the story does get very good. Very much like the first Xenoblade Chronicles, this game has a rising crescendo to its story. It just gets better as it goes. I did find the story cohesive enough overall to hold my attention through the entire playthrough. It just dragged a bit here and there.
Or because you can't bear the sight of them. You kill because you're weak. But I'm not weak.
Like a shonen anime, special powers sort of seem to come and go as it suits the story. You know, both protagonist and antagonist characters may just develop a special power if they need it during some important moment. But it's a fantasy JRPG. Who cares? That stuff happens. I did notice the side quests being improved in this game over the first one. In the first Xenoblade Chronicles, I thought side quests were overall very boring, and I would say at least half the ones in this game seem more interesting and like they had a little more attention and thought put into them. Some of the side quests even have unique characters and cutscenes, and those are fun to discover.
Just watch. I'll survey the area now.
It's content that isn't really required to beat the game and go through the main story, but it builds on the world and makes all the characters in this world more believable to hear more about their backgrounds. It's fun. One thing I need to note is that this game's story leans heavily into the concept of blades and drivers. This is some terminology that you need to get used to if you're going to play this game. Basically, the story and gameplay revolve heavily around drivers and blades and their relationship. Essentially, drivers are just the normal human characters, like the main protagonist, Rex, who you control at least early on. You can switch up who you control in battle once more characters join your party. And so the blades are what I can best describe as immortal, weaponized guardians for drivers to use in battle. And each driver tends to have one blade that's kind of linked to them. But later in the game, past an arbitrary point, you can link more blades to each driver, up to 3. It's a little like Pokemon trainers in Pokemon, or Shaman King, which has shamans and guardian ghosts. You can think of it like certain shonen anime. Basically, drivers are like Pokemon trainers, and blades are like Pokemon. Blades have their own stats, elements, and also a type. Types refer to whether it's suited to attack, healing, or being a tank, just taking lots of damage. So the different blades that you engage to the drivers in your party can basically customize your party members, and a driver can have more of a healing role if you put 1 or 2 healer blades on them, or you can make a driver just suited to attack by putting only attack blades and maybe a tank or 2 blade on them. You can customize drivers any way you like, and that's nice. One limitation is that, with a few exceptions, for most of the game, each driver in your party has 1 blade they can never disengage, effectively giving you only 2 slots that you can customize with blades of your choice. Now, the way blades and drivers work in this game's world is that when a driver dies, the blade they have engaged to them basically goes back inside this cube that's kind of like a Pokeball. And then the blade sort of goes to sleep until a new driver awakens it, and the blade's memories of its past are wiped clean completely, and it basically starts as a blank slate all over again. So, as you can imagine, this game uses that as a vehicle to explore sort of its mortality themes and that kind of stuff. It does a good job with it, I have to admit, even though blades seemed like an odd concept at first to me. I need to address how you acquire new blades for your drivers to engage, because it's not as well handled as it could have been, in my opinion. You have to awaken blades from these crystals you find in treasure troves, and just throughout the game, enemies might occasionally drop them. Basically, a driver will awaken a blade, and then that blade is kind of stuck with that driver, unless you use some consumable item you have a limited amount of to switch them over to a different driver later. And the biggest issue I have with this is that when you awaken a blade from a crystal, it's randomly generated. You get a blade just through random generation of its features, including its appearance and name, it seems. Unless you get lucky and score a rare blade that's unique and is way superior to any of the generic non-rare blades that you might get most of the time when you go through this blade bonding process. So I didn't like that I had to continuously bond new blades to eventually get lucky and get the rare ones I wanted to use. And once you get those rare ones, all the generic blades become just totally obsolete. There's no reason to use them, because their battle abilities are inferior, they look lamer, and some of them are just carbon copy templates of one another that look identical. There's just no reason to use them over the unique blades. It would have been nice if there was a more clear-cut, concrete way to get the unique blades, and maybe if the generic, non-unique blades that have less than 5 stars, maybe just do away with those completely. Because who wants to use them? And in addition to the process of bonding new blades being random, it's also annoying that it's irreversible, because your game will be forced to be saved every time you awaken a new blade. Meaning, if you reboot your game, power your Switch off, power back on, you'll be still stuck having used up the crystal you used, even if it was a rare or legendary crystal that's supposed to be, giving you a better blade. I used those and still got lame blades sometimes, and it's irreversible, like when something happens to you in a Dark Souls game. If they were going to make this process random, which they did, they should have made it reversible. They should have let you boot up your game and load again, and roll the dice again, if they're going to require this process to be like rolling a dice. Now, another similarity this game has with certain anime would be that it has some characters with very over-the-top costumes and designs to go with their at times over-the-top anime antics in cutscenes.
Dromark and I are gonna make a move.
There are members of your party dressed in just ridiculous clothing you don't really see mirrored in any other NPCs you find throughout the game world. But hey, being unique isn't all bad. I'm just saying they don't look like they fully belong in this game's world. But oh well. Their costumes are still interesting. And there's even more diversity among the Blade characters. I was honestly a little confused about what the rules are in this game world of what can be a blade. Like, as you're awakening more blades throughout the game, you encounter unique blades of all kinds. Like, some are like animals, some are like demon beast things.
What's here?
One in your party, Dromark, is just like an albino tiger liger thing
That seems prudent.
that
My lady?
just says generically intelligent sounding comments occasionally. There's also a blade that's like a combination of a person and an animal. Literally both. Both together entail one blade, apparently. You just see everything. It's kind of the same diversity you see in like Shaman King with Guardian Ghosts. Like, you see everything.
Oh, I'm nothing special.
And that's cool,
was just a
I
freak
guess.
is all.
There just aren't any real set rules to the blade design, which you could argue makes the game world a little less immersive and believable. Next, I'll discuss the exploration, because exploration, to me, was the main attraction of the first Xenoblade Chronicles, and I'm happy to report that the exploration in Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is also absolutely fantastic. I had tons of fun exploring in this game. It just has more of everything. Each Titan you explore basically has its own unique geography, its own color palettes to the environments that are kind of distinct. The places are memorable, and I haven't explored places like them really in any other game. They stand out. There are places that are basic templates of environmental diversity, like a snowy place, a grassy plains place, some forests, lots of bodies of water, places where you can swim through the Cloud Sea. Also, the Cloud Sea has tides in this game, essentially. The Cloud Sea can be at a high level or a low level, and that affects what areas you can access. The field skills of your blades are required for some legs of the exploration. You'll find them to be more stringently required for the side quests and optional content in the game, although as you progress through the main quest, you will not be able to escape the field skill requirements, and you'll have to pay attention to those and make sure you have enough blades with the right field skills to progress. The way it works is you'll literally come across physical barriers to getting somewhere in the game environments, and you'll have to use your blades to get through that barrier, whether it's using super strength to break open a door or using leaping ability to jump to some insanely high place that you can't get to any other way. It works well enough, although the tutorials don't explain well that multiple blades can contribute to overcoming environmental barriers and obstacles in your way when field skills are required. And it also got a bit annoying having to constantly access the menus of the game to switch out blades that had specific field skills I needed, and then when I come to a different obstacle in the environment, have to switch them out all over again.
Focus. There. That should do it.
It was a little time-consuming and tedious to have to always do that, and took me out of the exploration a bit. It was a constant irritant, but it didn't prevent me from enjoying the exploration thoroughly anyway. Moving through the environments feels fantastic in this game. It's improved over the first Xenoblade Chronicles, at least as it was on Wii. In that game, you had to hold something on the nunchuck while pressing the D-pad to swing the camera around, and of course now the Switch has a right analog stick, so that's way easier. You can also control camera height, and that's actually something I specifically thought to myself the first Xenoblade Chronicles could have used to get a better look at the environments. You can easily control camera height as well as zoom, and it's very easy to have a look at anything in these beautiful, gorgeous environments that you want to. You'll find treasure troves sprinkled about the environments with good frequency, not overdone. One criticism I have is it's a little annoying that when you dig up something or open a treasure trove, all of its contents tend to just explode all over the place, and then you'll have to clean them up to collect them. I think it was better in the first game when you opened a chest and its contents just went directly into your inventory. I think that's more convenient. The exploration is just such a blast overall though, and the developers went
We have to stay cautious.
above and beyond what they needed to do to make it fun. You can interact with the environments in a number of ways. There are some features you can climb on. There are some places where you can slide down slopes, and a few of these slides will end in jumps that you can then get air off of if you press the jump button at the right time. There are also multiple water slides. The developers seem to really like water slides. I wonder if they're fans of Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure due to that. The environments are made more engaging by the fact that you can basically jump on top of or over anything and fall down to places far below you. There's just almost no place you can't go. This game makes staggering use of verticality, even more so than the first Xenoblade Chronicles, and that's saying something. At one point, there was one Titan I was exploring, and I was initially just on the upper level of this Titan, and I could see this vast floor below me, and it wasn't apparent to me initially that I could actually go down there I thought it was just a bottomless pit that was rendered in the distance that I would never be able to reach. But later I found out how to go down there, and I was floored, literally, by the floor of this Titan that I didn't know I could even go to. It was pretty satisfying figuring out how to get places in the environments, and that's its own fun puzzle on its own. Just figuring out how you get places. And it was never too cryptic. I was always able to find my way. I never used a guide, never sought outside help as I played through this game. I was just able to find my way where I needed to get, and sometimes places I didn't need to get, through exploration. Moving around your character feels fantastic, just very responsive. Running as you move the control stick or turning on a dime, you can do that very easily. Time of day has influence over your objectives. Some things you can only do at night or during the daytime. The environments also look a lot different from day to night. And the other thing I'll say, compared to the first Xenoblade Chronicles, is that this game feels a bit more lived in. There are more settlements in the world on the different Titans, and also more wilderness, more natural, rugged environments filled with threatening monsters. There's just more of everything, and it makes the game world feel more complete and more believable in a sense, because you see all the civilization, all the trading happening, all the politics between nations on these Titans. It's a very well-designed game world, very intricately designed, and the use of full 3D space, including verticality, again, is just so superb. They even improved the compass to point up and down from where you are, pointing to where you need to get to make it easier to navigate with the impressive verticality. I want to make a few comments on the battle system in this game, and I won't comment on absolutely everything, because this game's battle system is incredibly complicated and deep. But I should go over some of the details. Firstly, you should know that tutorials appear in this game early on, pretty densely, and you might want to not pay attention to them due to how dense they are, but you should, because there's no way to view them after they appear. They come up in some windows you close, and then there's no menu after that to access them in that I can find. So that's kind of a drawback. The first Xenoblade Chronicles did have tutorials you could access in the menu at any time, so I don't know why they didn't do that here. You can still figure the game out, though, through just experience. Experience helps, and being observant in battle. This game is very similar to the first Xenoblade Chronicles in the rudimentary basics of its battle. You take 3 characters into battle, and it's basically a not quite real-time action RPG where, sort of like in a game like Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, you'll be selecting actions from a menu and they don't quite get executed right away. There's a little delay. So that much will be familiar from the first game. But there are a ton of new mechanics, thanks largely to the blade system that's introduced, that you'll have to learn, and it makes it almost like learning a brand new game. Even at the end of my very long playtime, I still felt like I wasn't an expert on this game's battle, and probably still have a lot to learn. But I learned it well enough to beat the game at least. It just took me a long time, almost 150 hours. So you can customize your party, your drivers, by engaging different blades to them. And when you do that, a number of things will change. The stats of your driver will change, the weapon they're using in battle will change, as well as the weapon arts they have access to, 3 per driver in battle. And also the number of aux cores your blade can equip will change. Aux cores are like accessories that give stat bonuses and that kind of thing. And also each blade has an element that affects how you link together combos and get bonus damage in battle. It's kind of too complicated for me to explain further than that, honestly. And unnecessary for this review. Now, taking a step away from the blades for a moment, your drivers themselves also can be customized in a couple different ways. So they have accessories they can equip, up to 2 per driver. And then they also have pouch items they can use. And these are consumable items that offer bonuses in battle. And over the course of battle and just running around the game, their timed usage will run out. And then you have to put a new pouch item there, or it'll automatically get refreshed from your inventory. You can expand pouch capacity. I gave some of my characters the ability to hold 2 pouch items, but you need to use a different consumable item to expand their pouch capacity, and I found a limited number of those, very limited. The aux cores have to be refined using collectible items you come across while you're exploring the environments. There are a lot of items in this game, and they're divided into a lot of different categories. It seems a little unnecessary how subdivided item categories are. For instance, pouch items, even though they have different categories like different types of food, literature, board games. Yes, actually you can go to board game stores in this game. All those different things kind of have the same sorts of effects. Like you can find items from different categories that have the same kind of effect. So it seems a little weird that we have these distinctions, but they're there. Another familiar thing that returns to this game's battle would be chain attacks. Chain attacks return, and you can link together pretty long chain attacks if you know what you're doing, but it's a little harder to learn how to do that in this game. It's a little more conditional. You have to pay attention to what arts you're using and what elements are in play in the battle. You have to pay more attention to the elements of your blades and things like that to link together chain attacks. There are also a multitude of status effects and conditions, and those things have a huge effect on battle, and a lot of abilities will play off those conditions, so you have to pay attention to all that. Now, there are fewer arts per character to use in this game. Each character can just use 3 arts instead of like 7 in the first game. But the specials and combos are more complicated, and the quick time event button prompts to coordinate your party's attacks, those have more complexity in this game. So it seems simpler on the surface, but there are layers of complexity to understand to figure out how to access the most powerful attacks your party can chain together. You really do have to get your party working like a team in this game to deal any meaningful damage to the enemies. And if you don't exploit absolutely every system in this game to make your characters strong, you might find enemies to be damage sponges. I certainly did. Throughout my entire playthrough, I always felt like even the common enemies, all enemies, bosses, or little hermit crabs I come across on the beach, everything was just really difficult to kill, and every attack I did, or just normal weapon art, would chip away a tiny, tiny amount of its health bar. Health bars just took forever to deplete no matter what I was fighting. And I do think that's a little bit of a flaw of this game. More than any other game I've played, it was just hard to do any meaningful damage to enemies. When you do get the combat system working better though, and are using more of the systems in this game to dish out the maximum amount of damage you can, then it's pretty satisfying. It's pretty nice that customization of your equipment and blades can support such a staggering variety of playstyles. There's tons of room for strategizing. One thing I liked to do was equip 1 or 2 of my drivers with accessories that boosted auto attack damage, and also another accessory that would restore HP from auto attacks. So they would just be auto attack HP restoring machines in battle. That was pretty fun. I do think this game's battle system is a little bit less engaging at times, not all the time, but at times, relative to the first game, because I did find at least one boss fight and multiple fights just as I was exploring places where I could start the battle and not press a single button throughout the battle and my party would just win the fight. It might take 5 to 10 minutes, but they would win, and I didn't have to do anything. So you could argue this game is a little less engaging at times, if I can do that. I would argue it. I do need to talk about the leveling and progression systems in Xenoblade Chronicles 2. This game has some typical RPG mechanics where your characters will level up just by defeating enemies in battle, and their stats will increase from that. But it also has affinity charts. Affinity charts for both drivers and blades. Now, the affinity charts for your drivers are a lot more limited than those for the blades, and you won't spend as much time in those. You'll just occasionally go into one to spend some points to unlock some ability, and then you'll go 5-10 hours maybe without doing that again. But the blade affinity charts, you might spend a lot more time looking at those. And you've probably seen this type of thing in another game if you've played a lot of RPGs. I've seen affinity charts of this nature in Final Fantasy X and a few other games. It's been around for a while, this style of affinity chart. I honestly am not super fond of them, but it functions. I do think this game could have handled its affinity charts better, though. When you unlock an ability in a blade's affinity chart, whether it's a battle ability or a field skill, you have to then view the chart to make it actually take effect, which is a little silly. It should just automatically take effect. And another criticism is that some of these abilities are redundant across different blades. If you experiment with enough different blades, you'll get pretty familiar with some effects and see them on like dozens of the different blades you can create. Effects like increasing your damage by some percentage once your character's HP gets below 30%. You'll see that pasted into a lot of different affinity charts for different blades. Now, on the other hand, unique abilities do exist for some blades, pretty much only the unique ones, and there are some cool abilities that are unique to specific blades, but you'll have to discover those, as I said earlier, by randomly awakening blades and hoping you get lucky. Another problem with the abilities in the affinity charts would be that there'll often be an ability that you have to do some random stupid thing to improve, to proceed in the game, and I didn't approve of this at all. Being asked to, for instance, go kill an arbitrary specific number of some random little enemy, and for some reason it was often cute little harmless looking enemies like little bunnets, which are little like rabbits, little bunnies. You'd have to just go kill 5 of these little bunny monsters, and then you can be strengthened to proceed through the game. Sometimes I would see kill 5 of a specific enemy in one blade's chart, go kill 5 of that thing, and then later a different blade would say, okay, do that again, kill 5 of this same specific enemy, and you don't get the past credit applied to the new blade, so you have to go then do it again. It's just not really well handled. Also, you'll have to discover what the favorite pouch items of different blades are by putting various items in the pouches of your drivers, and apparently the blade then enjoys the item in the pouch too. And at one point, I was locked out of a door I had to get through to proceed in the main quest, and the only way to get through that door was to upgrade a field skill of Poppy, the artificial blade, and I had to go find what Poppy's favorite staple food was and use that item twice by just putting it in Tora's pouch 2 times in a row before I was able to upgrade the field skill I needed to get through this door and actually proceed with the main quest. And here's the problem with that. I don't give a fuck what Poppy's favorite staple food is. I'm sorry, I just don't care. And it doesn't make sense that I have to find out what Poppy's favorite staple food is to make Poppy strong enough to rip a door open. just rip the door open, Poppy. Fuck your favorite food. And I don't really care what any of the other Blade's favorite things are. I don't care what Wulfric's favorite literature is. I'm sorry, just not relevant. Not relevant to Battle Wulfric. Percival, I don't care what you like to drink. No offense, Percival, I just don't care. And the point I'm making with these examples is that it needs to make some sense how your characters in an RPG upgrade their abilities. It can't just be any random thing. I'll note some other gameplay features that Xenoblade Chronicles 2 added over the first game. One new thing would be the Merc missions. A good chunk of the way through the game, you'll get access to the ability to send blades on Merc missions, and you do this with blades you aren't using in battle. Your non-engaged blades can just be sent on these missions, and a mission will generally have a requirement of having a certain number of blades of certain types with certain skills. All the missions are essentially just sending your blades away, and then a timer will start running, and the blades will complete whatever objective the Merc mission had them doing, and they'll typically earn a little experience, some Merc level points, and often some items which are quite helpful for battle. And that was the main reason I did these. Other than that, I felt the Merc missions were kind of just an annoying thing to manage. I constantly felt like I had to send my unused blades on these missions to make them useful for something. This game also introduces salvaging. There are salvaging points right overlooking some area of the Cloud Sea, and at them, Rex can start this little mini-game, this kind of quick time event mini-game where you have to press button prompts, 3 buttons in a row, and then he dives over the edge and brings some treasure up, and often some monsters you have to fight as well. I did the salvaging as much as I felt I needed to get various battle bonuses and items that were useful for either selling or equipping. I think I found some accessories that way. I guess it's a somewhat fun little detour from the main quest, although I wasn't super into it. Also, even though this game's battle systems with the blades and all the ways you can customize blades are already pretty complicated, they're made even more complicated by the fact that Tora, the Nopon member of your party, uses an artificial blade, only one at first, called Poppy, and Poppy has her own parts that you need to refine from either crystals to customize her, and it's very complicated, very convoluted. There's a Poppy customization screen called like Poppy Swap, and just looking at it was intimidating. I didn't mess with it too much because the way you ultimately upgrade Poppy requires a lot of ether crystals, and the only way you get ether crystals is by playing this arcade game within this game. It's kind of like an NES style arcade game with 5 stages you can eventually unlock. And the game was fun enough for me to play a few times, but the amount you have to play it to get a meaningful number of parts and ether crystals to upgrade Poppy is just ridiculous. It would just take dozens of hours to get everything you would need to meaningfully update and upgrade Poppy, and I just didn't have the time or patience for that. However, I did actually find Tora with his Poppy artificial blades to be one of the more useful members of my party, even without going deep into that customization. So at least it wasn't required to make him a useful party member. Moving on to visuals, I think Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is an utterly fantastic looking game, and I'm quite impressed that it can look as fantastic as it does, be as expansive as it is, and run as well as it does on the Switch. I honestly think it's a technical marvel.
I'm back! I hope things went well.
I did notice a little frame rate stuttering in busy areas, say the cities that have a lot of NPCs in them, or areas crowded with a lot of enemies, and weather effects. Certain weather effects may have also had an impact on the frame rate. The frame drops were so rare, however, in the 150 hours I played this game, really just in these isolated, busy areas for a brief moment or two, that I didn't think it was a big deal. Like, the take-home message I get from this game's performance is that it's amazing it runs as well as it does, and the times it doesn't run well are not that big of a deal. I didn't feel like the poor performance at times impacted my enjoyment of the game really at all. Yeah, I think the environments look really good. They change with the day-night cycle, the lighting of places will change, and I thought everything was just beautiful to look at. Everything had just enough detail for the scale of the environments. There were a few recycled enemy designs, but the first Xenoblade Chronicles had that as well. Overall, the enemy diversity and environmental diversity were excellent, and incredibly improved over the first game, where those things were already really strong.
Just so.
I also think Xenoblade Chronicles 2 holds up as well as the first game does in the audio department. The voice acting, the English voice acting is great all across the board, just about. Maybe one or two characters had slightly weaker performances, but I thought the voice acting was fantastic. You hear some interesting accents, too. There are a lot of Scottish accents, I want to say, in this game, but you also encounter a few American accents, and I'm fine with that. The Nopon characters do speak in their kind of annoying broken English with every other word left out, and that can get a little annoying in places and parts of the story that have a lot of Nopon antics, but I found it to be tolerable, and honestly, they did provide a good amount of comedy. I laughed a few times.
You made the right choice.
The music in this game is once again fantastic. Yasunori Mitsuda returns to lead the composing efforts, and the results are fabulous. There are a lot of lush orchestral pieces, perfectly complementing the different environments, setting different atmospheres. The game mostly has orchestral music, but you'll hear a little bit of electric guitar kick in during some of the battles particularly. So that's Xenoblade Chronicles 2. I thoroughly enjoyed this game and spent about 146 hours on it before I finally got the credits to roll. As I spent more time with this game, I only enjoyed it more. The exploration was a constant attraction for the whole playthrough. It never got old. I just loved running around the environments and discovering new places. It was so fun. The battle did take me longer to come around to on account of it just being more complex. There are a lot more things to learn in this game over the first game. I would definitely recommend people play this game, but especially if you don't mind anime, and especially if you love exploring huge game worlds.